Good morning. We are live on YouTube on the Falcons podcast. Let's bring in X and Facebook. What the heck? Why not? So we can at least reach Chris Walker on Facebook and maybe a few other people. Not a ton of people here that reach Facebook anymore. I don't know what their problem is, but our problem is not enough hours in a day. Welcome in, y'all. This is the Falcons podcast, and we actually lost an hour. It's a little early today. But it is an easy day to get up and get going when it is the beginning of the free agency contact period. And today is a day when not all the moves, but a lot of the big moves will be announced, and then they will officially sign on Wednesday, on the 11th. So, they call it, I don't know, I think it's starting to get away a little bit. Floyd called it in here. There's certain new terms that they just rankle me. Legal tampering is one of those because there's no such thing. So I will never call it legal tampering. I'll call it a contact period. Y'all know I came from a recruiting background, and they had all kinds of the quiet period, the dead period, all this kind of stuff. But the ability to contact free agents, because they don't become free agents officially until the new league year starts on Wednesday, but you're allowed to talk to players who are still under contract for the next 2 days with other teams. That's the contact period for free agency. And basically, it starts at noon today, and it's been going on with other teams' agents forever. So you'll see 1201 will hit, a giant $100 million deal will hit. It's like, wow, they got that done in 15 seconds? That's amazing. So the contact period starts today, which means they can announce all the things that they've been talking about behind the scenes for the last 6 months anyway. And it's a good time. It's going to be a busy, busy time for the Atlanta Falcons because below 20, I think there's probably 20 people guaranteed spots on this team. There's going to be a lot of change. And one of the things I wanted to go over today is, like, in a perfect world, what would a perfect, semi-realistic, I mean, you'd have to hit all of your targets, which you're not going to, but the ability to sign these guys is there. You've got the financial flexibility to do it. What would a perfect class look like? So we're going to go through that today. There's already been some news today that's already happened that affects the Atlanta Falcons because they are in the free agent, the quarterback market. There's already been two big moves, big-ish, one huge, one seismic, and then one is, that's interesting. The one that piques your interest a little bit more, because we've talked about Tua for a while. Tua is, I still can't believe someone can afford to take on a $100 million dead cap hit. 67 this year, 30 and change next year, because the Miami Dolphins are releasing, that was reported this morning, that it is factual. In fact, Miami reported it themselves. They said, we have informed Tua Tagovailoa that he is gone and will be eating a $100 million dead cap hit. 67 this year. That's roughly just 20%, 22% of your cap. And the thing is, that wasn't the only one. I mean, they're going to be well over $100 million in dead cap. So 35, 38% of their money is going to be going to players that aren't even on the team anymore. Man, relegation. If y'all don't know what relegation is, we can get into that later. But you wouldn't be able to do this if there was promotion and relegation, because your ass would be kicked out of a league. So the other one that caught my attention this morning is, well, that's interesting, was Jake Browning. We've been talking about veteran bridge quarterbacks that have some, that would be in that mid-tier, not even mid-tier range, but, the $10 million range, $12 million range. Who could you bring in like that? And Jake Browning is going to hit free agency. Now, the Cincinnati Bengals are still probably the favorites to re-sign him. They need him, but they did not tender him. So he is going to be a free agent. So that's not a bad option when we start talking about players. He's played a little bit more than some of the other guys. Played more than Malik Willis and had some success. Now, Cincinnati is the Thomas Dimitroff style of team building. Let's get our quarterback and then spend everything on wide receivers. And, hey, we got lucky on defense on a couple guys. But the offensive line is poor, but their weapons, I don't know that anybody's going to have the same weapons. So how much of his success was system-based? That's what scares me about Malik Willis. Green Bay's got a really quarterback-friendly system up there. He started a couple of games and someone's going to throw $30 million a year at him, that's just nuts to me. But Jake Browning is now on the table as well. But before we get into everything, I want to say hello to some folks that are here nice and early. Floyd, like I said, I didn't mean to pick on you. I was on the Mile High Huddle podcast last night, and they titled it "Legal Tampering." I'm just like, shudder. I'm like, there's no such thing as legal tampering. It is a contradiction in terms. It can't be tampering if it's legal. So, and I've noticed that that term has started to go away a little bit. Contact period. It's a free agent contact period. And I think the Falcons will absolutely get some new blood, and we'll go over some guys that I think could really help this team that are in the Falcons price range. So we'll hit that one. Austin, it's Freeze. We've talked about this before. It's Austin Freeze, I believe. Good to see you, Austin. Austin, even if he's not here, always comes in on the comments afterwards, so it's always good to hear from you. Warden, thank you for being a member, my friend. And we had a couple new members come in. Most recently was JW Odom and then Fair Play Sports 8804. They get to come in and get the members-only content and get the badge, get shout-outs. And we do Fridays, we do members-only podcasts. So welcome in, y'all. As soon as we hit 100 and we're on our way, we've cracked the 70s. We're moving up through the 70s now. 100 members. I will raffle off a Falcons jersey of your choice, assuming, it's not a collector's item or something, but the player of your choice. We'll raffle that one off and give it away. So thanks for being a member to Warden and John, who is also a member. He says, good morning. Terry is here. He says, good morning as well. Another PR. We got a couple folks in Puerto Rico. So he says, morning, everyone. Back in the home island for a quick visit. Well, cool. Hope the weather's nice for you. Unbeatable is a member as well. Good to see you. Keith Robbins. All my members are showing up today. I love it. AJ, Xavier, OMT Studios is here as well. Nick. So we desperately need a wide receiver too. Who you thinking we can snag? Well, since you asked the question, in my dream scenario, and as I'm going through the wide receivers here, I look at it and just, for me, I say, you may agree, you may not, but Romeo Doubs. I think he's affordable. He's in that wide receiver 2 range of $15-16 million. Similar money to what you were paying to Darnell Mooney. Darnell was on, I think, a 3-year, $48 million contract with 2 of those years guaranteed. He was on 16 a year, I believe, right in that neighborhood. Those numbers escalate as you go up. Now, Romeo's younger. He's like just 25, 26 years old. So you could go realistically with a 4-year deal with 2 years of guaranteed money. And then you could, and they'd be 2 club options, which gives you some wiggle room down the road. Running through Spot Rack, I did the Spot Rack this morning. I was running through some of these numbers. I think they're way conservative on some of these. But if you gave 2 years of guaranteed money on 15 a year, so a 4-year, $60 million, $30 million guaranteed, let's say 25 of it was a signing bonus. If I'd have to do the math, let's say 20 is a signing bonus because it's easier to do the money that way. You would have $5 million per year of those 4 years allocated as the signing bonus. And then you could give him a minimum base salary this year of $1.3 million. That means his cap hit would only be $6.3 million in 2020 in 2026. So how can you afford to give a guy that much money? Well, that's how. That's how the signing bonus. And if you've got a cash-rich owner who can give signing bonuses, and the Falcons do, you can help manipulate the salary cap to keep those numbers down. Now, I'm not going to do that for every single one of these. How can you afford them? That's how. Signing bonuses stretched across multiple years. I give a guy a $60 million contract with $30 million guaranteed, including a $20 million signing bonus. If I guarantee some of his salary down the line, like in year 2, it goes up a lot. But you know what? The salary cap also goes up a lot. And you've got guys that are expensive veterans coming off the books, like Caleb McGarry. That's why it is so important to hit your rookie contracts. Cheap, cost-controlled rookie contracts lets you go out and get a wide receiver too. So for me, and there's other guys out there. We wrote one on SI. Garrett wrote one yesterday. If here's some good targets, I think Romeo was number 1 on there. So we'll hit some more though. Definitely. Good morning, Shane. Hope you are doing well. It's good to see you. And let's see, Southside. Good morning, everybody. Orange Lantern, another member. Thank you for being here. AJ says, are we expecting any more cuts or restructures? Yes, I believe so. Think we're a little over 18 million right now with the lack of picks we need to have. We need more money. I'll be pretty surprised. You don't have to do them right now. The one restructure from Kirk was because you had to be under the cap before the start of the new league year, and that's what that let them do. As I've stated over and over and over and over again, it didn't actually save them any money. It just changed when they had to pay it. It was an accounting move. But when they move on from Kirk, and that will happen here in the next 48 to 72 hours, I think they save an additional $2 million, but they take on some dead money. But that dead money can then be offset when he signs a new deal. So when they take on that money, it'll be 35 dead. They can split that across two years. I think it's probably like 22 and a half and $10 million. And then you can get 10 back. So he will only cost $12 million this year and then 10 next year, which isn't terrible when you think about, Tua getting a $67 million dead cap hit. But the thing to remember, and I just kind of bit my tongue and laughed about it when people were talking about how much better the dead money looks for the Atlanta Falcons. And on paper, it did. But most organizations don't keep a 36, 37-year-old one-away quarterback on the books. Most of them would have cut him last year and taken on the $55, $56 million cap hit last year, and then started fresh again this year. So it's a little misleading. Kirk was a dead cap hit last year because again, if he was playing, the season was already in big trouble. Yes, AJ, I think there's going to be lots. The Broncos prove eating the cap hit is worth it. The Broncos might be the exception to the rule, though, and it's happened. But the question is, the Broncos hit on their rookie quarterback, and they've got a Hall of Fame play caller, and they have the richest owners in American sports, I believe, in the Walton Penner Group, so they could go out and use money to build up the lines of scrimmage. Again, I like the idea of having a quarterback-proof system. Kyle Shanahan does a good job with that in San Francisco. Sean Payton has done a good job with that. He built up the trenches. Their wide receiver group and their weapons, their offensive weapons, is nothing to write home about. Since they've been there, they haven't spent any money really on a wide receiver. Cortland Sutton is solid. I think he is a really good low-end number 2, but that's what he's paid. He's paid about $18 million. And then at running back, they've used a couple decent draft choices. They used a second. Actually, they've used 2 seconds at running back, and Javonte Williams and RJ Harvey. But they built up the trenches. They need wide receivers. That's the next step for them. But it's not easy, that's for sure. Anonymous, it's a beautiful day. Yes, it is. And Terry says, who are some of the free agents? We'll get to that one for sure. We'll get to some more of those. Stealth Mode says, I see Tyler going to Seattle if they don't re-sign Walker. I don't think they're re-signing Walker. I think that's almost a done deal. And he's probably going to get 12, 13 million. Tyler comes in at half of that. I saw a free agency ranking. It said average per year was like $1.8 million for Tyler Algier. I'm like, all right, don't need to really look at anything else that you just wrote. $1.8 million for Tyler. Come on. Chris, we found you on Facebook. Good to see you, Chris. Hope you're doing well. GATX, good to see you. Hope you're doing well too. And Terry, I have a question. How do y'all feel about Rashid Shaheed? He's had some off-field problems. Do we want to mess with that? I don't know. So I'm more interested for me, and let's hit linebacker here. For me, I think the linebacker I'm more interested in is also over there was I'm getting my guys confused. I get Rice and Shaheed confused, and they moved around, and I definitely get them confused. So skip what I said about that on who's who. I think a really good linebacker in this class could be Leo Chenal. Now, 49ers, we could end up losing to Raheem Morris. Leo, they're in on Leo Chenal, but Spot Rack has him at like 4.5. I've seen 2 years, $18 million. And, he's young enough. You could probably go 3 years and then ease that cap hit a little bit. But for my dream free agency class, my wide receiver was Romeo Doubs. My linebacker was Leo Chenal. And, because I think Caden Ellis is gone. I think he is not without a doubt, but I'd put a lot of money right now on Caden Ellis not being an Atlanta Falcon. And we'll wish him well. Hopefully he goes out of conference, not just out of division, but out of conference, and goes and plays. He'd be such a good fit with, again, the Denver Broncos, I know. But I think he'd be a great fit there. So we'll see. And we still get to cover him all the time here. Let's see. Trenton. Good to see you, Trenton. And he says, good morning, Scott. Here as part of my Monday routine. Wide receiver 2, 3, 4, basically wide receiver. We'll have London and the other guy. Yeah, the other guys. So on our members only podcast on Friday, we got this unrealistic trade down. I hit trade down, and basically I got all of Arizona's remaining draft picks. I think we were on Pro Football Networks. And then a fourth. I'm like, well, I have to do this. And then as I'm getting down, we took a wide receiver in the first. I think we took Skylar Bell in our first pick. Took him first. Then as we get down, well, there's Malachi Fields and there's Jacoby Lane. I'm like, well, I'm not passing on those guys in the 100s for God's sakes. And then as I started thinking about it, I'm like, well, hell, it makes sense. You got Drake London. I got Romeo Doubs. And then what? Practice squad guys. So if I have 3 wide receivers that I like in the draft, that actually makes a lot of sense. I got 2 veterans and 3 rookies. And by the way, I picked up 5 extra picks with that trade down. That, yeah, I could go heavy with trade downs. There's middle of the round wide receivers that should be upgrades on what you've got. What I've said all along, though, is the bar was set so low last year that wide receiver will be better in 2026. It has to be. It would really hard to be worse than the Falcons had in the wide receiver room. And, I'll get on somebody when I think they did something wrong, as you know, but I don't necessarily blame Terry Fontenot for that. It was going into that year, we thought wide receiver was a strength. Darnell Mooney's coming off 994 yards. Ray McLeod's coming off 750 yards, a career high. And I think they combined for about 400 yards last year. It was a disaster. When you're looking at guys and thinking, okay, Casey Washington, Dylan Drummond, Chris Blair, these guys look like decent options as number 4. Kadero Hodge as number 4 wide receivers. Yeah, okay. And then all of a sudden, when Drake is out, David Sills is your number 1. Oh, good Lord. So wide receiver, big one on this one for sure. Let's see here. Yeah, Nick says, I love Moon, but he was never the same after he got hurt. Romero would be a fantastic too if we could grab him. That's the money right there. Is $15, $16 million. Can you afford that? Yeah, you can. The Falcons can afford that for sure. Zacchaeus, welcome back him in the bargain bid, maybe. But AJ says he'd be a good 3-4. He would be. They're gonna have to get 2. I've said all along, and some people that don't pay attention to every day. If you're in here watching this podcast on a Monday morning, you're a diehard. You know this stuff. You knew Darnell Mooney was not going to be back on $18 million. The casuals in the comments on X, they were shocked. Oh my God, what are we going to do at wide receiver now? Why are we cutting wide receivers when we don't have a wide receiver? Because he was terrible and he's expensive. That's why. It doesn't take a 4-0. Find out, before I want to, before I just pop off, I like to do a little bit of research. And if I have to pop off, I will tell you right off the bat, I don't know as much about this as I'd like to. Speak first, think later on social media for sure. Joe Craig Air Force says, Joe Flacco, here he comes. There's gonna be in the next, let's see, we've already been on here 20 minutes. The next 40 minutes that we're talking, something could happen. So we'll see. We'll see. But in my dream free agent signings, so we talk linebacker, we talk wide receiver. I put Kyler Murray. He's on the cover. I put Kyler Murray at quarterback. He's $1.3 million. And of all the guys that are out there, I think he's probably the most talented. You know, if you're wanting to get Romeo Dobbs, who do you want to tell him your quarterback's going to be? We got Michael Penix, we got Kyler Murray, or we got Michael Penix and Joe Flacco. Which one do you think is going to be a better recruiting tool for offensive players on free agency? Hey, we got him cheap. That way we can give you some more money. And if we like him, we're going to keep him. You know, Kyler Murray is, I think, by far the better option. And at 1.3, he's going to be on a veteran minimum. How much do you think he's going to want? He's not going to want. He's going to play on a 1-year deal because he's not going to want all his money going back to Arizona. 1-year prove-it deal while he's collecting his money from Arizona, and then he'd sign a new contract in 2027. Is that with the Falcons? I don't know. But I think he is probably the best of the quarterbacks available, and he's the cheapest of the quarterbacks available. Hello. So, you know, have you seen the Vikings with him? You know, a lot. Are the Vikings the number one team there? Maybe it'd be nice for Atlanta to be in that conversation. They're in the conversation. We'll see if they can pull it off. And Alex says, Flacco's not that bad if you can get him. No, I don't think he had a decent season last year. His numbers were okay. But he doesn't really move the needle. He's like, okay, we know we won't be god awful at quarterback. Okay. We might be in the 20s. Okay. Now, how about that defense? And can I improve the weapons around him? And can I set this team up to be better than they were, next year, where I can improve in 2027? And yes, Terry, Gino's out there too. How good is Gino? You know, would I rather have Geno Smith or Kyler Murray? Gino's going to cost more because he's a legitimate free agent. Actually, he's got some guaranteed money coming too. I just don't know if he's got offset language like Tua and Kyler do on that one. So I would again, Kyler would be my number one. He's basically free, and I think he's the best quarterback that's available out there. I mean, if you had a game to play tomorrow and you want Malik Willis or Kyler Murray, that one's, I think, fairly arguable. There's some people that would say Malik Willis. He's just so unproven. He just really is. He's so unproven for me. And then, you know, the response is, well, Kyler Murray's proven too, and he stinks. All right, well, okay. Like I said, it's a discussion. It's absolutely a discussion. When I say I don't always agree with myself, these are the discussions I can go back and forth on. Here we go. Michael Lewinsky. I said we had our Islanders in here. Island Mike, good to see you too. Bold move, Trenton. Trade James Pierce. Yeah, I hope his whole contract can go with it. And otherwise, you're just eating a bunch of dead money. Let me see here. And then we got some. Michael says, I want Murray, Penix and Murray. That could be something we could be excited about for training camp, don't you think? A healthy Michael Penix and Kyler Murray coming in. I mean, there's arm talent for sure. There's absolutely talent. Are there red flags? Yeah, of course. Yeah, you're not getting the perfect quarterback this cycle. There's red flags, but that could be something we could be excited about. And frankly, if Kyler Murray would tear it up in camp, he would tear it up in camp. Michael Penix looked great in camp last year too. And then all of a sudden, it took him a month to throw the ball beyond the sticks. It was just insane. What did I want to hit on this? Oh, here we go. Let me spend just a couple minutes on this, and then we'll get to the final free agents that I'm interested in. You know, this is what reminded me. The bold move would be to trade for James Pierce. Now, y'all hear me talk about the power of bias all the time. We're all biased. All of us. Bias is experience that makes up how we see the world. We're biased by our past actions. There's no such thing as unbiased. But sometimes, when we say unbiased, it basically is, do you recognize your bias and can you account for it? The power of bias just never ceases to amaze me, though, sometimes. And I was reminded of this when Max Crosby, edge from Las Vegas Raiders, was traded in 2026 for 2 first-round draft picks. Now, if y'all remember, week 5, the Falcons are sitting at 3-2. Kirk Cousins had just thrown for 550 yards, and the Atlanta Falcons defense was on a historically bad pace for sacking quarterbacks. And I wrote it week 5. this is going to come back and bite them because you cannot not go after the quarterback. What makes sense for both teams, but it'll never happen because Terry Fontenot and Raheem Morris have put all their eggs in Michael Penix's basket. If he's not successful early, they will be gone, so they won't do it. But what makes sense, the Raiders liked Michael Penix at 13 as a trade for Max Crosby and Michael Penix Jr. That makes sense. The Falcons fans lost their minds in my comments. Lost their minds. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. He is the future. No, he's the number 8 pick. He hasn't thrown a ball in the NFL. He's the number 8 pick. And if on draft night you had called up the Raiders and said, hey, we want Max Crosby, we'll give you number 8, they would have hung up the phone on you. They would have said, no effing way. Are you joking? No. How about number 8 and next year's number 1 pick? Because he's 2 years younger then. 2 years later, he still goes for 2 first-round picks, 2 years ago. But it's a reminder that until they prove that they are the future, they're not. They're not the future. They are prospects. And all pros are more valuable than prospects. But it's just what changed between week 5 and the draft night with Michael Penix was that number 8 pick, which was just abstract and not worth Max Crosby, was a person. Was a person that the administration bet their jobs on and spent 6 months talking up. And everybody wants to believe it. Everybody wants, oh man, we love this is the future. We got the best quarterback in the draft. Just ask Terry and Raheem. And all of a sudden, Michael Penix was untouchable. Now, what's the butterfly effect of that? Let's say if that did happen, Kirk still gets hurt. Kirk still gets hurt against New Orleans, but maybe he sits out. Maybe they're not afraid to put in their experienced backup quarterback, and Kirk sits out 2 weeks and comes back and plays healthy instead of trying to play through an injury. Do you draft James Pierce Jr.? The Falcons probably have a first-round pick this year. And what about this year? Well, this year you probably do a little bit of an extension, restructure with Kirk Cousins' contract, and Kirk Cousins is probably your quarterback this year. That might not be the answer. It's just, to me, it's interesting. Where would you be if you had gone back and I don't think the Raiders would have done that move at the time. But you've got Kirk Cousins, you got a first-round pick this year, you've got Max Crosby on your team. Would you be better off than you are right now? Probably, but it's interesting on that type of stuff. Definitely how that goes. But it never, what could you trade Michael Penix for now? You wouldn't want to trade him for an all-pro that was worth 2 first-round picks before he'd thrown a pass because of the hope. The hope is so powerful. It's so powerful. It has such an effect on your decision making. The hope. Well, but what if he's the next Brett Favre? I know it's tough. It's tough. But it made sense at the time. And it wasn't going to happen. It wasn't ever going to happen. But it did make sense well beyond people saying I had lost my mind to even suggest it. No. This is valid. Max Crosby is worth a lot. So is a number 8 pick quarterback. Would have been interesting. It would have been a blockbuster for sure on that. Now, let's go. And John says, good to see you, Johnny. Says some fans have asked if she grabbed Tua because he was just released, and I say no. FYI, yeah. We've talked about Tua. I think I even put him on the cover. Tua is an option. And he'd be in the same boat as Kyler Murray. He'd be cheap. He'd be a veteran minimum on a 1-year deal because the Miami Dolphins are paying him this year. Any money that goes to Tua goes back to Miami. He's got offset language. And it's a lot more than $10 million that Kirk has. So would you take Tua for $1.3 million? Yeah, I would. I'd rather have Kyler Murray because yes, I agree with y'all who say, no, I don't want Tua because some people say he stinks. Well, okay, fine. That's a different argument. His injury history is scary, so having 2 guys with those injury histories as your quarterbacks is scary. Now, quarterbacks get hurt, but we can help avoid some of these problems by not bringing in hurt quarterbacks. So he wouldn't be my number one choice, but Tua in Atlanta as a part-timer, hopefully, he can stay healthy for 4 or 5 games, if you even need him for 4 or 5 games. Because the single best scenario for this team is Michael Penix playing at an average to above average level for 17 games in 2026. That's the best case scenario for this team. So that's where and Southside says, hey, Kyler and Tua want starting jobs. They don't want to be a bridge. Well, they're going to get 1-year deals. So in a sense, they're going to be a bridge with trying to earn it. You don't know what you're saying. We don't know what they think about Michael Penix and Flowery Branch now. Those guys aren't tied to Michael Penix Jr. anymore. Terry Fontenot and Raheem Morris bet their jobs on Michael Penix Jr. And they spent a year, when they last game of the season of 2024, after Penix had a 3-game, cameo, all Raheem Morris talked about was how excited he was for 2025 to have a young stud quarterback and how excited they were going to be, because they put all of their eggs in that basket the second they drafted him. Not like because it was so stupid to give Kirk Cousins $100 million and then draft a class of red shirts. That was asinine. So on that one, Dog says, can we bring back Ray now? He was a solid slot wide receiver for us. Maybe he was. He didn't. Where did he go? To New York, the Giants, I think, and he didn't last there either. He had a Zach Robinson and Kirk Cousins made him look good. It's kind of that Matt Ryan effect, where how many wide receivers had better years after leaving Matt Ryan, including tight ends? Austin. How much money did Matt Ryan make Austin Hooper, for God's sakes? Who was Sanu, Mohamed Sanu, Russell Gage. Matt Ryan made guys a lot of money. And Pamela says, now that I think about it, I wouldn't mind getting Jimmy Garoppolo. Again, veteran bridge, raises the floor of the room as your backup, not a starting caliber quarterback in this league anymore. Wouldn't mind, $2 million. You give me competency at quarterback for $2 million, then I'm going to say, okay, so be it. He doesn't really move the needle for me. Again, Kyler Murray would move the needle. And does he want to be a starter? Hey, Kyler, you're going to come in here, you're going to compete. We're going to invest in wide receiver. We got a solid offensive line. You got Drake, you got Kyle, you got Bijan. Why don't you come here and put up 4,000 yards, win the job, put up 4,000 yards, and go get another $100 million payday? So that's where that's why I'm on the Kyler Murray side of things. And the Vikings is where they're talking about him ending up. Are they Zach Wilsoning JJ McCarthy? JJ's what, 22 years old, 23 maybe? I think it's too soon to just completely give up on him. So anywhere you go in their situation, unless he goes to where could he go? Pittsburgh, and are the Steelers getting a little tired of 1-year rentals? Because they tried. God, and this is what happens when you reach on a bad quarterback, you get Kenny Pickett. That was a horrible class. That's when you reach. And D-Dub says, why not go all in on Willis? All in is 4 years, $120 million. And you're shipping Michael Penix off. Okay, fine. If you're doing that. But Malik Willis, every time I look up, I'm like, what did he have? 3 starts? No, he had 1 start. He's thrown. I'll look it up again. But I saw our buddy Seth Walder saying, oh man, his last game was so amazing. He's number 1. He's actually underrated. How could he be underrated? It's it's 1 game. Man, it's 1 game against who knows what the other team was even trying to do. Desmond Ridder played 4 games with 4 touchdowns and no interceptions as a rookie. Michael Penix looked amazing. Am I going to really stake my future on that? Financial future? And it's not even that. Owners, some of them don't mind flushing money down the drain, but he's going to cost $100 million. QB record. his game, his start was pretty amazing. I mean, he was 30 of 35. That's 86% for 3 touchdowns and no interceptions in 2025 on one start. Prior to that, in the 3 previous years, he had 5 total starts, 2 in Green Bay and 3 in Tennessee. I just it's too much for me. It is. It's I'm not spending that. A draft pick is one thing. Um Atlanta has a and Willis has an Atlanta connection. Do your homework. Are you talking to me? I went and saw him over at Roswell, brother. I've got video on my page of him. Do my homework. Come on, dude. At least do your homework before you start putting other people down. I live 20 minutes from Roswell High School. Come on, man. But I just one, he's going to have other options where, if you're paying that kind of money, that's your free agency class. Now you're going with rookie wide receivers because you're basically done in free agency. Where I'd just as soon get some other guys, but I wouldn't want. That's too risky for me. I'm more conservative with an approach. I want more players, more shots, more arrows at the quiver, and to put all that money into one guy. I'm too conservative for that. So for him to have, if this was 30-year-old Aaron Rodgers or help, Patrick Mahomes, one thing, but man, this guy hasn't really accomplished anything on something like that. So we're at 36 minutes here. Let's continue along. Defensive tackle may have been the easiest. What's the dream signing for defensive tackle? It's Sean Franklin Myers. Here's the Broncos again, but he's the number 1 interior defender, and he's really good. He plays the run well. He can move inside, outside. He's not that nose tackle, so to speak, but and the ugly secret here in Atlanta right now is Rook wasn't very good last year. And he'd slide in next to Brandon Dorlus, and Rook would be a 3. Not necessarily a 3 technique, but a third defensive tackle, a third interior lineman. Ooh, that'd be nice. That'd be nice to have that rotation. He'd be an upgrade over what David Onyemata was last year. And, I think he's probably going to be in the 55 million range. But you could go, sorry, that not a year. About 18 million, 18 to 20 million. I put him down for 3 for 20. But if you give him 30 guaranteed, that's basically a year and a half guaranteed. That's more money than he's ever had in any contract. And this will be his last chance at a big one. He fits really well into this defense. He's a penetrating interior defensive lineman who can kick out and run situations and play on a big end. So when it comes to that side, and how much do we cost? Okay, let's say 3 years and 60. You can knock that down to about $8 or $9 million. So if we've got 6 for Romeo Doubs and I've got 9 next year for John Franklin Myers before I get my Kirk Cousins money completely off the clear the deck there in 2027. So it is possible. So that's 4 positions. That's quarterback for me, Kyler Murray, veteran minimum, dirt cheap. John Franklin Myers is expensive. He's probably going to get the best free agent money of interior defenders in this class. You're paying a premium there, and you're going to have a lot of competition for him. I think he wants the money. I think he's a guy who's motivated by whoever gives him the biggest contract. So you'll have to come out of pocket for that one. Okay, Arthur Blank's got money. Linebacker, Leo Chenal. If you go 3 years on him at 9 per, that's similar to Caden Ellis money on that. So, it's a replacement there. If you don't get Leo Chenal, what about, I can't remember anybody's freaking names anymore. I'm old. Is it Devin White, linebacker, our friend from Tampa? Yeah. So he's still 27 years old. Dude had 174 tackles last year, and he's supposed to be cheap. One of those guys who just knows how to do a job, not necessarily making plays. So, that would be another option for me is Devin White for a replacement for Caden Ellis, because I don't necessarily need Caden Ellis, depending on what happens with James Pierce Jr. If I've got guys up front that are getting pressure, I don't need to bring my linebackers in there. So, Michael talking about allergies. I'll be shedding tears when allergies are gone. You're probably a little bit ahead of us. The whole town hasn't quite been painted tennis ball green just yet. That's here coming in the next couple of weeks. Bucks, good to see you. He says, who do you think the Falcons get today? I don't know. I can't say who they will get. If I had to bet at quarterback, I think it's going to be Joe Flacco. My number one would be Kyler Murray. And Alex Anzalone is a good option too. Covered him in high school, so he's got to be getting old. Covered him in high school before he went to Florida. He was part of Urban Meyer's classes. He's got to be old now. Terry says if we don't bring Floyd back, there's going to be lots of options. I didn't really look at edge just yet. I went with quarterback, Kyler Murray, defensive line, James Franklin Myers, wide receiver, Romeo Doubs, linebacker, Leo Chenal. That leads one more that I think you can still fit in under the salary cap, and it's cornerback. Now I can't go number one cornerback, and this one was probably the hardest one for me to do. So I came up with a few names. I had Roger McCreary, former Auburn standout, Monteric Brown. Now, Over the Cap says he's $4.5 million. SpotRack says $9.2 million. I tend to believe him, but the Falcons can squeeze in a $9 million corner. They can. They absolutely can. Last year, SpotRack, they do a really cool thing where they do, and it's, you don't know how well it's weighed. I think it's weighed too much towards how much they're paid versus how good they are. Because like Patrick Surtain was like the 47th valued cornerback, reigning defensive player of the year. But as far as value goes, Monteric Brown was number 18. So that means, what are you getting for your money? Who's the number one guy that pegs this chart that they could probably retire it for? Puka Nacua, a top 5 wide receiver on a rookie contract from day 3 is the best value in all of sports on that one. So Eric Stokes was number 26 in value, and SpotRack says he's at $7.4 million. Jack Jones out of Miami. I mean, they've got to keep somebody, right? But he's leaving too. And he was number 35 in value, and he's listed at $5 million for at the wide receiver. One guy we didn't mention. We didn't mention a lot of guys actually. But when we're looking at value on a 1-year deal, this isn't a move for the future. This is a move for right now. But we talked about Keenan Allen before. Keenan Allen last year was still number 13 on SpotRack's value metrics based on how much he made versus but I'd have to look and see if he was still getting some dead money from a previous contract too. So but Keenan Allen was still a good receiver last year. And for example, okay, how good is this metric? Guess who? The worst of 66 wide receivers that qualified. Guess who the worst value at wide receiver is in the NFL, according to SpotRack? I'm going to take a sip of coffee. You know the answer, or I wouldn't be asking. Okay, the worst value at wide receiver last year, according to SpotRack, was Atlanta Falcons' own Darnell Mooney. I'm like, yeah, that checks out. That checks out. Yeah, Jimmy. And for me, linebacker was a need anyway. So and Jimmy People says, if Ellis is cut, we got to find us a good replacement. Yes. A veteran in free agency. And then that's the replacement for Ellis. You got to get a replacement for JD Bertrand too. You can't have JD being your number 3 wide receiver, linebacker. You just can't. He's not good enough. When he was on the field, it was bad. And there was a game where it might have been the Dolphins game where they got blown out. He was playing full-time special teams too. And he had the most snaps of any player in that game for either team. So, I want my best player on the field as much as possible, right? JD Bertrand was on the field more than any other player in that game. the Falcons, it's no coincidence that the Falcons got blown out 30-0 when your MVP is JD Bertrand on that one. Let's see. What would you pay for Jalen Carter? You know, he's going to go 2 first rounders also. He's if they move him, because they can't pay everybody. This is salary cap. It's forced parity. You know, we're going to punish the people who succeed, and we're going to reward the losers with higher draft picks. It's forced parity, and the NFL loves it. And Jalen would go for 2 first-round picks. Are there other ways to do things? You know, do I want to give up 2 first-round picks for Jalen Carter? Probably not. And again, when I start thinking of big trades like that, I think you really got to be in your window. You know, unless it's quarterback, I need to build for the future. But if I'm going to give up cost-controlled players that I can have for multiple years for a player, I need to be in my window of at least NFC Championship, Super Bowl. And that was, you know, part of the Max Crosby discussion. Like, the Falcons are 3-2 and they were 6-3. They were an NFC contender. They absolutely were. Would Max Crosby, that's when you want to make a trade like that. You know, you say you don't want to be in quarterback purgatory again. Well, 1, you don't know that you're not going to be. That's not for certain anyway. And 2, how often has this team actually been in a window where they're going to be competing for an NFC championship? You know, there was a nice 10-year run where they were in and out of that conversation. But prior to that, once, you know, like 1998, maybe 1980, you know, one time, and they got beat in the first after blowing a lead to the Dallas Cowboys in 1980. But how often, if you're going to take a swing, that's the time to take a swing. And I just don't think the Falcons are in. They need to be cautious. They need to be more conservative. They need bodies. They need depth. They can't be trading away draft picks. So I wouldn't be in the Jalen, as much as good as he is and as valuable as he is. I just wouldn't be. I wouldn't be there. GATX, can you please explain the hype of bringing back Olamide Zaccheaus? Let me see. I know he's been solid since he's been good. Olamide, it turns out I can't spell his friggin' name. So let's try Zaccheaus. I can't spell his name to even get, there it is. Olamide. You know, so he was in Chicago last year. Since he's been gone, isn't that a song? I only know that because of I love the movie Pitch Perfect, so I know. Say what you want. I love the movie. I'm a big fan of underdogs and strong women. So you know, he had 533 yards in 2022. He went 164 with Philly, played 17 games. Washington, he had 506, and then last year with Chicago, he had 313 with a semi-erratic quarterback who throws the ball around a lot. He's 28 years old. If he's $4 million, you know, what did he make last year? If I look at best values, does he track? He came in at 58 out of 66. So I think he can probably do better than Olamide Zaccheaus. So I'd want to spend my money. On a number 2, and then I want to use draft picks. So, you know, depending on how cheap he is, it just depends. But as far as, you know, Carter is also an All-Pro. Yes, he is. And he's going to be 25. How much did Jordan Davis just get? Jalen Carter will beat that when he's a free agent. So you're talking 25 plus million and a couple of first-round picks to get Jalen Carter. I just don't think that the Falcons are in a position where they can make a move like that. But again, I'm definitely, when it comes to team building, I'm definitely on the more conservative side for sure. I like multiple players. I like having multiple shots, and that's why trading up always rankles me on something like that. Scott Booth, thanks for being a member, my friend. It is good to see you. He says, I'm not seeing a lot of chatter around trading Pitts, but general manager Ian Cunningham would have to be asleep if he's not shopping that guy hard. He's 25 with 2 standout seasons, bookend standout seasons, first and last. Surely we can get some picks for the guy. Sure, you can, because He's making wide receiver 2 money also. He's at $15 million. So you figure, he's a well-paid tight end. He's top 5 tight end, but he's 38, 40 as a wide receiver, as a pass catching weapon. I think they're talking about him about an extension if it fits into the plans. But by tagging him, you gave yourself the option. And by him having a good year in his contract year, you have an asset now. There was talk about, and I just would shake my head, and not always just shake my head. Sometimes I would call them out. When people talking about, here, 5 trades every team should, here's the trade everybody should make. And, before last season, it was Kyle Pitts for a 5th. I'm like, you're out of your mind. There's just no way. It's worth the risk to have him around to see if he has a good year at $11 million, because now you could probably get a 2nd for him, or a 3rd and a 4th or 2/3 if you wanted to, if you needed to move him. But frankly, right now, before free agency, I got to have Kyle Pitts out there. I got Drake and Kyle as my pass catchers. That's it. So I got to have him. So we'll see. Let's see. God Hand presents trade Drake at the deadline. Which deadline? The deadline in November? Because if he hasn't signed a new contract by then, that's absolutely on the table. I want him to have a new contract, an extension before the draft. The thing is, and I was looking at the Raiders. The Raiders have moved on a lot, and they've got a lot of picks. I'm like, this is Atlanta's type of luck. This is considered a weak draft at the top. So naturally, the teams that are cursed would have the high picks. When the Hawks had the number 1 overall pick, I haven't watched the Hawks in decades. I moved on from the NBA as I got older and other things. There's only so much time in a day for your sports. But it's our luck. I'm like, when I saw the Hawks had the number 1 overall pick, I go, oh, it must be a bad year at the top. It's the only way the Hawks. There's no Patrick Ewing. There's no Tim Duncan out there. One of these guys that people are like, oh man, the number 1, the year to have the number 1 wouldn't be the Hawks. And we were right. We were right on that one. If you wait, the thing is, if you wait for the November deadline, you're not going to get that much. If you wait for the November deadline to trade Drake, where his contract is up, you think you've got November, December, you've got maybe 8 games left on his contract, you might get a 3rd for him. So if you're going to make a move, you got to make a move now, beforehand. So that's when his value. I mean, look at what AJ Brown was traded for. Look at when you wait to trade, it would come down. I would say 3rd. You might be able to squeeze 1 first out of it, maybe. But if you're going to move him, you need to move him before they also have to pay him right away. Get them a 1-year deal on that one. So, but I don't want to trade Drake. I want Drake to be a Falcon for a long time. So, Big Buck's also a member. Thank you, my friend. He says, I don't get all this trade Pitts talk. He was number 2 tight end in production last year, and folks want to trade him. Why? Resign Pitts, resign Drake, add deal on the draft. And I Harris from Ole Miss and add a corner. I want 2 DL. I want 2 wide receivers. I want 2 corners, and I want 2 linebackers in that one. I think it's really the inconsistency, with Kyle Pitts. When, let's look at his game logs. When Drake London was healthy, Kyle Pitts was kind of disappearing. When did he have his best years? Well, he had his best years after Julio as a rookie with Matt Ryan, an accurate quarterback. When Julio was traded and Calvin Ridley quit, Kyle Pitts becomes the number 1 option. I think when people say, when they're out on him, and one of the biggest criticisms of him is his inconsistency, is the effort. And hopefully that has come. Again, he's 25 years old now. And this is going to be a different offense for him. But again, he's getting paid wide receiver 2 money, and I think he's worth wide receiver 2, and you don't have a wide receiver 2. I think you need him. But it's been a really hard to get Drake London and Kyle Pitts involved at the same time. It has, and he's been, last year, he finished strong, and remember, one of the reasons he was number 2 in tight end production is because there's not very many productive tight ends because the position isn't really considered to be all that important. But you look at the middle of this the Falcons were, let's see, we know they didn't start off great. They were 3-2 before they went on a 5-game losing streak. Beat New Orleans 6-7. So they were 1-7. In that stretch, Kyle Pitts had 62 yards. That's not bad. 59, no touchdowns. 38, no touchdowns. 38, no touchdowns. 14, no touchdowns. 25, no touchdowns. And then here come the Jets with these next 2 losses. And then he had, over his last 6 games, 82, 90, 166, 57, 16 against the Rams, and then 58 to finish against New Orleans. So when you're talking about the criticism, it's like, oh, great. He's stepped up as his contract was out and as Drake was out, and they had to throw him the ball. That's the criticism. It's valid. It is. It's valid. So, if there's people that will be out on him, I'm not out on him. I think you need him right now, but I understand people that would say I'd rather trade him. How valuable is a top 5 paid tight end right now? For this team, pretty valuable if you can get that out of him consistently. So I get both sides of it, and that's why I said all along, tag him. Absolutely tag him. I'm not necessarily I don't mind tagging him again. A second franchise tag has an escalator on it, so it would be like 1.3 the highest, so he'd go from like 15 to 19. That still isn't that much. But that's why I was always in the tag him and work from there. 1-year contract. 5th-year option. He had a great year. That was a 1-year contract. He's on the franchise tag right now. That's a 1-year contract. Do I want to give him 3 years of guaranteed money? No, I do not. We have a trade. The Jets just traded Minkah Fitzpatrick, and will sign him to a 3-year, $40 million. The Jets are aggressive. Their defense has been solid. I guess they want to build around that. I don't really know what they're doing. And TJ, he says, don't trade starters in their prime unless you have a clear upgrade. No, that's not necessarily the case. Sorry, my throat's been bothering me lately, so I'm having to drink a little bit more coffee than usual. It's not necessarily the case, TJ. Don't lose them for nothing, okay? If they're coming to the end of their contract and you have some value in him, trade him before he walks. That is the other scenario in there. If you don't think you can re-sign Drake London, you trade him. You don't have a clear upgrade in mind, but I don't want to lose him for nothing. My upgrade is I get a first-round pick over 0. That's my upgrade. So if that makes sense. So that's where I will go with that. So Red Swarm says, good morning, Scott. Scout Kennedy says, do we kick the tires on Tua? I think that'd be about option number 5 for me. Option 1 for me would be Kyler Murray. And then option 2 is probably going to be, my money is still on Joe Flacco being an Atlanta Falcon. I mean, hell, you can almost spell Falcon with Flacco. I probably will mess that up before and call him Joe. If he comes to Atlanta, I'll probably call him Joe Falcon. So I think it's going to, my number 1, and I put him on the cover of this, my number 1 free agent option for the Atlanta Falcons at quarterback is Kyler Murray at a veteran minimum, because his offset language means he's not going to get paid because that money goes back to Arizona. So I would go that direction. I think it'll probably be Joe Flacco. He comes in here and competently runs the offense right away, and he'll be cheap. He was cheap last year, $5 million, something like that. That's cheap. So I would go that direction. And Jimmy G, I don't know that he's played too much memorable. I would rather Rashawn Gary to the Cowboys. All right. So I guess he was a free agent after claiming he said goodbye and got hacked. Rashawn Gary is an interesting prospect to me, and then we're going to get out of here. Just a little, behind the scenes. So I saw Rashawn Gary at a camp in New Jersey when he was a sophomore, and this was before kids were getting offers as freshmen. This was before you're scouting 3 years down the line. 20 years ago, you were still scouting seniors and ranking seniors and not juniors. So he was a sophomore, upcoming class. And I saw him at a camp. He was 290 pounds. And his combine numbers were very similar to the interior defensive line numbers at the NFL Combine. I'm like, y'all, this is the number one player in the class in 2 years. He was close. I don't know if he was number one, but he was close. But what's interesting to me about Rashawn Gary is, he was 290 at 16. They don't normally slim up, and good, don't get me wrong. And I had him as the number one player as a defensive tackle. They don't slim up and play an edge rusher. They get bigger. So he was kind of him and someone like David Pollock, who was a freshman All-American defensive tackle and then was drafted as an edge rusher in the NFL. Those are two of the more unique people I've ever seen in this business, was Rashawn Gary and David Pollock. Very similar type of players coming out. David was probably more productive in college, but neck injury, his career was cut short, but just amazing athletes and very, very different. All right, now we are going to get out of here. And Yes Major says, would it be funny if the guy drafted after Matt Ryan takes us to the playoffs? I'd love to find out. I'd love to laugh my ass off about that. Some playoffs around here would be nice. I've forgotten what they're like. I'd love to have a good hearty har. But Matt Ryan would be just fine with that too. As the new president, taking the team to the playoffs in year one, I guarantee you Matt Ryan would be happy. And that was one of the things I said about Matt Ryan. We know he's got this team and this franchise's best interest at heart. He's not just trying to cover his own ass. And that was the feeling I got out of the last administration and Flowery Branch. They were looking after themselves instead of what was best for this team, this club, this franchise. And I have no doubt that Matt Ryan will do those things. And if he doesn't like what he's seen, he'll walk. He'll walk. He didn't need the job. He'll walk. So on that note, and real quick, it's probably the last one. Just want to keep Tyler Algieri. Isn't gone yet, is he? No, but it's not going to be long. I think about 3 years, $21 million with 15 guaranteed is probably about the number he's going to get. And that's your starting linebacker. I don't have enough starters where I can get my backup running backs. That's good money for a cornerback too. That's a starting linebacker. And frankly, that's a quarterback, the way you're shopping on this. So I don't think Tyler's a luxury right now on this one. So I'm going to get out of here, y'all. Stay tuned. Keep those notifications on because there's going to be lots happening here. We are 2.5 hours. Did I do that math right? 2.5 hours away from kickoff for free agency. We are FalconsSI.com, which is Atlanta Falcons on SI. And then we'll be here on YouTube. So if you see a story, hit the like, hit the share. It's a big help for everybody. Thank you for everybody for being here today. And we will be back. Something big happens, we'll go live. So on that note, Shanu says not linebacker or quarterback money. Come on. For linebackers, $7 million is what Caden Ellis made. It's what Divine Diablo made. It's what Leo Chenal, who was my number one free agent at linebacker, is scheduled to make. It's starting linebacker money in the NFL is $7 million. I think there's probably only 15 linebackers, inside linebackers in the NFL who make more than that. And for quarterback, for what we are shopping for, which is Kyler Murray, who will be on a vet minimum because of offset money. Tua will be on a vet minimum. He'll be $2 million. And then Joe Flacco, who's probably the guy, he's going to be under $7 million. So yes, it is. Right now, it is. So come on. I'm right. On that note, I'm out of here, y'all. Y'all have a great rest of your day. I promise you we're going to see you again soon.